Home is where the heart is.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
My wife and I have been having an ongoing discussion. I've talked about it from time to time on the show. We are in our early 50s. We have 2 children, 20, 21, that are basically up and out of the house. They're in school doing different things, but we have a lot of time. We're becoming empty nesters, and we live in the house that we raised our kids in for a good number of years, and it's a fairly large house. It's like 3,000 square feet. It has a beautiful backyard that she's worked very hard on. But now it's just the 2 of us and our 3 dogs. 2 of them very old. That won't be 3 dogs for that much longer, probably. So we're redefining, okay, what's the rest of our lives? What are we going to be doing over the next 10, 15, 20 years now that are transitioning from that 24/7 parenting mode? And one thing I always put out is, we should downsize. We should sell our house. We should go get a condo in the city, either Fort Worth or Austin or even Franklin, Tennessee. Or we should downsize our home so we have a smaller financial footprint that we have to deal with. And then go live different places and rent out our house so we can explore a little bit more. So that's my position. Her position is, I ain't selling this house. I am not moving. I love this house, and we're not moving. So we have discussions, little discussions over and over again, nothing in depth. We're just floating ideas. It's like, when they float policy bubbles, they feel the current of the winds, but it's an ongoing discussion. And it really comes down to home is where the heart is. And her heart is in this being the home with the backyard and all she's done to it and the things that she's doing to the house now that we're able to. And my heart, I love the house. My heart is a different vision. They're both right. But it's figuring those out that we're on a journey on. But for you, where your home will be, especially when you retire, can dramatically change what the landscape might look like financially and what might be possible in retirement. If you choose to live somewhere much less expensive, it could literally buy you retiring 3-4 years earlier. So those are some pretty important decisions to at least address. And that's what we're going to do on this show. If you take one piece of solid advice from me on the show, that would be don't take advice from me on this show because I don't know anything about you. This is helpful hints and education before you make any decisions. Talk to your legal advisor, your financial advisor, or your tax advisor because that's just common sense. Hey, now before we get started on the show today, I want to make sure you're aware of the 5-minute retirement makeover. I spent months preparing a 3-video series, very short videos, to help you totally rethink how you're approaching creating a great retirement. I mean, let's be honest here. Traditional retirement planning doesn't work. It doesn't really inspire any confidence or clarity about the future. Literally, it was built for your parents and the kind of issues they dealt with. You're not your parents. So if you are serious about creating a great life in retirement, you need a different approach. So check out 5minuteretirementmakeover.com and learn an approach that you can use today. So in the news today, what we're going to talk about is this trend. It's not a huge trend, but it's a growing trend of Americans like you and I, assuming you live here in America, retiring outside of the country. Now, home is where the heart is, and this may seem very, foreign to most of us, but there can be some huge advantages from a financial perspective if you have the spirit to do something like that. And each year, International Living publishes a short list of the best countries to retire in. And they have this something called the Annual Global Retirement Index, which is pretty cool. So let's go over a couple of these countries just to give you an example of how powerful this could be. So I'm not going to start at number 10. I'm going to go to number 1. The number 1 country to retire internationally is actually Mexico. It's been in the headlines a lot because of the wall and things like that. And I live here in Texas and, very dangerous places right on the border like Juarez. But right now, there are nearly 1 million American retirees living in Mexico. And according to the survey, living comfortably on $1,200 a month, which is substantially less than a comparable lifestyle here in the United States. Now, number 2 on their list is Panama. I've never been to Panama. It has consistently warm temperatures, great internet connectivity, which is really important, and a pretty cosmopolitan city. So that made number 2. Number 3 is Ecuador. A gentleman who is retired there says his monthly budget for he and his wife's come to less than $1,500 a month. So you can see that this could be substantially less. Now I'm going to go through the rest of the list because we're going to talk to a couple that actually did this on today's show. Number 4 is Costa Rica. Number 5 is Colombia. Number 6 is, believe it or not, Malaysia. Number 7 is Spain. Number 8 is Nicaragua. Can I pronounce that correctly? Number 9 is Portugal. And number 10 is Malta. Now, I have a client and a longtime friend who is actually from India, but has lived here in the United States for a long period of time. And what he and his wife do is they visit a different South American country every year for vacation. But they do it with an eye of where they might think they might want to live later in life. Because although they could probably afford to retire in the United States very comfortably, they are very financially disciplined, and they're very internationally oriented. Now, this may seem like a really foreign idea to many of us that haven't traveled a lot internationally and don't have that mindset, because home is where the heart is, and the heart for many of us is in the United States and really in the area that we grew up. But this is the time to at least consider and explore this, because it could literally allow you to retire a decade earlier because of the financial benefits from it. Now, there are a lot of things that get involved in this, right? We got healthcare, we got access to activities that we enjoy, we have standard of living, we have closeness to the kids and to friends and network and family and things like that. So what I did was I invited a couple on that blog about this and did this exact thing. Retired internationally very early so they could redefine how they live life and travel. And we talked about a lot of different aspects and their experience of retiring internationally. And let's talk to them in the practical planning segment. So in the practical planning segment today, we are going to talk to Keith and Tina, who are the bloggers of Retire Early and travel.com. And well over a decade ago, they retired and moved to South America, and they have been blogging and writing and talking about their experience. And I had a great time with them on the show to talk about some of the issues, the common questions that you and I wonder about. Okay, how do we do this? How could this be done? So let's have a good talk with Keith and Tina. Keith and Tina, now you are one of those adventurers that a lot of people that are heading towards retirement or those freedom years talk about doing, but never actually do. You actually are United States citizens, correct?
That's right.
Yes, we are.
Born and raised and worked your career in the U.S.
That's right.
And now where do you live?
We live in Cuenca, Ecuador.
So talk to me about that journey. How did two American professionals end up living internationally?
You know, we were on vacation and we saw that there were other people, other Americans living in another country. We're in Guatemala. And Antigua it was the city we were in. It's not a very big city, but there were Americans living there. And we're like,
We met one of them and they started talking to us about what it was like to be an expat. And really, at that point, we hadn't really even considered it. And we were 54 years old at that time. And they were just telling me what the expenses were and that. And we got to talking amongst ourselves. We said,
this might be doable now. Otherwise we were looking at retiring when we were 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you live in the States?
We lived in California, in Sierra Madre, which is right next to Pasadena.
Okay. So you're on vacation and you learn about this and you're like, oh, this might actually work. So from that kernel of an idea, what did you do next?
Well, I had to do some research. So, we had savings, but, most of my money was in a 401k. So I did some research and something I found out that not a lot of people know. There's an IRS rule called the 72T rule, where it says that you can retire in the year you turn 55 and collect money from your 401k or 403b penalty free. So I didn't know that. I thought you had to be, 59 and a half like an IRA. So once we found this out, we said, well, geez, all our money's available to us, I think I turned 55 in like 6 months after, we were in Guatemala. I said, we could actually do this and retire.
But then we had to start doing some research. If we were going to do this, where would we want to retire? So we came up with a list of things that we thought would suit our needs. We wanted a walkable city, whatever country we were in. We didn't want to own a car. We wanted to walk. So it's good for your health. We wanted a large enough city where we would not get bored. There had to be a lot of things to do. We wanted an expat community already a little bit. We wanted to be able to talk to people and have a conversation in English, as well as make friends with people that lived in the local people.
Yeah, weather was really important.
Oh, yes.
We lived in Florida for most of our life, and we were done with the hot, humid weather. We like beaches, but we didn't want to live on a beach, So that was probably the other thing. And, of course, low cost of living. And we like the Hispanic culture. So we spoke a little Spanish already, so we wanted to live somewhere where they spoke Spanish. Yeah, so then we just did the research, and believe it or not, Cuenca came up like
number one on our list.
Yeah, and actually, it was listed in the top 10 like 2 years in a row. So we did all the research, and as far as the internet was concerned, everything looked good. So now we just had to go visit and verify.
So over what time frame did you guys do that research?
As soon as a little bit of the research took place while we were on vacation, but as soon as we were back the next 2 or 3 days, all of that kind of came together. And within a week, we were booked. 3 weeks after we came home from Guatemala, I think, we were on our way flying to Cuenca, Ecuador.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were motivated.
Yeah, so my job, it was a good job, but it was very, very stressful. And I was, and my wife is a naturopathic doctor. We worked on building her business up, and, but life is short. I'm all for, really living life. And there was really no reason for me to continue working if we could make these lifestyle adjustments and we could go out and have fun instead of, working till you're old and then you can't do anything anymore.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So we went, I think it was in June.
Right.
Our first trip to Cuenca. We got here and we said, wow, this is everything that it said it was on the internet, and we met lots of, other expats here and just learned a lot about the area, and we just absolutely loved it. We returned back
in November. We came back for a second trip in November.
Yeah, but before that, when I got back in June, I immediately put notice in work, and I gave a 6-month notice. Again, that key was when I turned 55, and I turned 55 January 4th. So January, I think 11th was my last day at work. So I put in a 6-month notice. We came back here in November to actually look for a place to live. And we actually found and rented an apartment in November for our actual return date in January. And we did all the work in the United States. So we got our residence visa. We shipped a container here.
So we were really fortunate, too, that we were able to sell my practice before we came in November. So we had somebody to buy that.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah. Everything kind of moved kind of quick. We were motivated to really start enjoying and living life.
So
like you said, we're organized. So we did most people who do this, I would say, get their visa after they're in country. But it is a lot easier if you do all of that paperwork while you're stateside.
Okay. So prior to this vacation, this was not something that you had even just casually talked about, or was it?
No.
When we were young, we said maybe it would be nice to live in another country someday, but that was in our 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's it's strange. It was, I mean, we love to travel, and we always want to travel as much as we can, but not working at 54, when we were
55.
Yeah, no, that wasn't even on our radar. It was really, I think what really put us over the top was the ability to live at such a low cost, in another country. I think one of the biggest problems with trying to retire early in the United States is healthcare.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Healthcare is so expensive, and we're too young for Medicare. And just trying to maintain healthcare in the U.S. is crazy expensive. It's not like that in pretty much anywhere else other than the United States.
Well, let's go through a couple of those. Let's talk about healthcare. So obviously, it makes sense. It's a lot more affordable, significantly more affordable.
Significantly, yeah.
Talk about the quality.
The quality's great. Many, if not even most, of the physicians here and dentists do their internship in the United States. Some of them, actually do their advanced studies in the U.S. Quality of healthcare is great here. I mean, this is you hear more and more about the medical tourism, leaving, the U.S. because of the expenses is so much less. Yet everybody is just happy with the quality.
I think you actually, from the friends, we've not had to use a hospital here, but we've had several friends who have had hospital stays. And every single one of them raved. It was like staying in a 4 or 5 star hotel. Their stay in a hospital. Yeah. The quality of care, the nurses aren't overloaded with patients trying to get from one to the next. So the nursing care is fantastic.
For instance, a doctor, if you want to go see a doctor here, it'll cost you $25 to see a doctor. That would include any follow-up visits you need. It's all part of the $25. Plus, the doctor gives you his cell phone number, and you can text or call him whenever you want. Many expats here don't even have insurance. They just pay out of pocket because things are so inexpensive.
And so now talk about isolation. Now, do you have children?
We have children. We have 2 adult children. But heck, they started the international lifestyle way before we did.
They kind of promoted us, or prompted us, I guess I should say, to do this. Our son was living in China teaching English. Our daughter graduated from a university in Southern California, and she took off within the same month she graduated. She lived in China, Spain. She was back in the U.S. a little while. She lived in France.
North Korea or South Korea?
South Korea teaching English. She was all over the place, and she had no plans. When we moved here, she had no plans on being back in the U.S. for 10 years. So we thought, why are we sticking around? Neither one of our kids live here.
You had that as a real impetus in that everybody's worldview from your children wise, you weren't leaving them in the States never to see you again and making it difficult. They were already living that kind of lifestyle. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Now our daughter lives back in California. After a couple of years, she got lonely. She decided she wanted a real career. So she doesn't know how long, that's what she called it, but she doesn't know how long she'll stay in California. And our son actually has moved to Ecuador and is in the process of getting a visa to live here right as we speak.
Okay. So you had a family that's used to being all over the place. So that definitely helped. What about friendships and clubs and just that network that you had when you were living in your community?
That is really the only thing we miss from the U.S. is friends and family. That's always tough. But we lived in 3 states in the United States, so sometimes you just have to move and you make new friends.
We did it kind of in thirds. So the first third of our lives we lived in Michigan. The next third, we lived in Florida, and then we were in California. So we still have friends in all those states. We still have family. We just got back from a 22-day trip to the U.S. where we went and visited everyone that we could.
4 states, yeah.
Of course, yeah. But we have new friends here, new groups that we hang out with. We have something to do this evening.
We made both, gringo friends and also Ecuadorian friends. And I tell you, our social life is way more busy here than it ever was in the U.S. We travel with these people. We go out. We
Dinners, we play cards.
we learned
symphonies.
We learned to play bridge, and we play bridge socially, and Tina plays in a club. So there's so much to do here. And when you're not working, it's, you just have the time to try new things.
And speaking of new things, Keith had never drawn or never painted before in his life, but he thought, that's something I'd like to do when I have time. I want to take art lessons. And he is quite the artist. I mean, every one of his paintings we've had offers to purchase them.
So he's well beyond stick figures already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he does watercolors, which is the hardest medium to do, and that's what he enjoys doing. So he's a watercolor artist.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you have a wonderful blog and site, Retire Early and Travel, and we'll have a link to that. But you guys are still relatively young. You obviously are very energetic. Do you feel a lack of purpose?
Good question, because we've met people that have gotten bored and wanted to go back to work. And I think probably just for that reason, the purpose reason. But no, I think, we do have a purpose now. It's really our blog. We love doing the travel blog, and we really are working hard in building that up. We recently reached our 4 millionth visitor to our website last month. So that's kind of, gives us something like, I don't know, something maybe we kind of have to do at a certain time or a date, maybe some deadlines. But again, that's really because we want to do it. So, our motto is, if it's not fun, we don't do it. So, and we travel a lot. So, other than that blog, I mean, the purpose is just living life now. It's,
spending time with people, our friends. We'd like to, in the next, say, 10 years, travel to as many countries and continents as we possibly can. Because like Keith said, even though we're both really healthy, and I really work at being really, really healthy, you never know what 65 years or 70 years, maybe we won't be able to go as much as we can go now.
Okay. But your question implies, since the only thing we're missing in our purpose would be a job or work. And, I think there's a lot more to life than a job and the things you do in your work. So,
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's about growing, right? It's about growing in skills and other areas.
And anything, right? Like me learning art, us learning to play bridge, the travel experiences we have all the time. I mean, those are all great.
Okay. Now talk to me about the financial aspects of it.
We had savings. So to let you know, we haven't touched a 401k yet. And matter of fact, when I left the U.S., I sold my car. It was a 2-year-old Jeep Grand Cherokee, so nothing huge. But that money I got from selling my car, we've lived a year and a half here just on that money alone.
From the other end of it, how much would you say to live reasonably from an annual living expense to pretty much do what you want?
Here in Cuenca, I think, you're going to live really, really well on $2,500 a month. But I know people who do it on less than $1,000 a month.
Just because of housing costs and medical care and travel, everything just costs a lot less.
Yes. I mean, people here, it's not uncommon to get a 2-bedroom apartment or a house for rent, and you pay like $450 a month.
Okay.
Our water bill's $9 a month. Our electric is $45 a month. I have high-speed fiber optic internet, and I pay like $50 a month for that.
And you live in a place that most people don't think of all the time. I just went on vacation to like Turks and Caicos, or even Costa Rica. Relative to where you're at is much more expensive. So a lot of it is finding those spots that give you everything you want, but aren't the most common ones, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Costa Rica was like this before, right? But now it's turning into a little America that, we know people that have lived there, and the costs are just skyrocketed there.
Yeah, which makes sense.
But there's still plenty of places like this to live. Panama is not so bad. It's still, and we hear people who are going to Portugal is another great place.
Vietnam, Cambodia. It depends whether you want the real warm culture, real warm temperature, or do you want to be like, we're up in the Andes where we live. Our house doesn't have heat or air conditioning. It's not duct for either one because the temperature is always pleasant.
Yeah.
24 hours a day, so you just don't need it. I think another thing to look for, like our town is a college town. And when you think about it in the US, it's always one of those places, when you look at each state, some of the best cities to live in are usually college towns. And Cuenca has, I think, 6 universities, major ones. So 4 big universities.
That's an excellent point, because a college town brings a lot of vibrance to any city.
Yeah, it does. Culture. Usually it's a walkable town. Yeah.
It's like having an old dog around a lot of puppies. They sort of pep them up a little bit, right?
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So tell me about safety.
Yeah, safety is no problem here.
We always say that it's kind of like living in the US in the 40s or 50s.
Yeah, you see little kids walking down the street to get on their bus or walking home from the bus. I mean little kids. I mean 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, totally unescorted. It's not a problem. Nobody thinks twice about letting their kids go out and play at the park.
And it's not necessarily a school bus. It may be a public bus they're getting on and off of.
Yeah. So we have no problems walking, at night here. It's very, very, very safe. I think in Cuenca, the only crime really here is like petty crime. If you leave your, cell phone on a table and kind of walk away or don't watch it, somebody might take it. You think an iPhone to somebody here could be 2 months' salary. Little crimes of opportunity like that, you got to be kind of careful. That's one thing. It's very safe, and you can't go by the country as a whole. You have to go look at the cities, because I think, a larger city like Guayaquil here in Ecuador, if you look at that city, the crime is a little bit higher there. You actually have, like you have in the United States, robberies and muggings and things like that. But so you have to look at the cities, and Cuenca is just a very, very, very safe city.
Now, I imagine, so I'm thinking of myself, because I love this, and I have a number of clients that have talked about doing a lot of this. I think of my wife, who travel is, living somewhere outside of her normal comfort zone is just very well outside her comfort zone. So I imagine you have to have a little bit of a sense of adventure.
Oh, and I think we definitely do. I don't think it's any accident that our kids love to travel. We brought them up traveling when they were little. We had an RV and we traveled to all but maybe 4 of the states in the United States. So, and instead of going to tourist attractions, we saw Mount Rushmore, the Badlands, up to Mount Cadillac in Maine, wherever we were, we saw the natural sites. They learned that people were different and even talked different than us in different parts of the country, like when we were in Louisiana or Alabama, and they loved it. And they both wanted to experience different people and different cultures. And that's why they chose to live in other countries. Our son lived in India, China, Thailand, and now here.
People probably would be apprehensive and be a little worried about going to another country and worried about not being able to speak the language and it just being different. And what I would say to somebody is just go and try to spend 2 weeks, go for 2 weeks vacation somewhere and try to, maybe get like a place that has a kitchenette where you can kind of try to live a little bit like a local and see what it's like. I really bet you'd be surprised.
That's great advice. That's great advice.
Yeah. Cuenca is one of the cities that there isn't a lot of people that speak English here. So, we spoke a little bit of Spanish, but as soon as we got here, there's plenty of places that you can take Spanish lessons. We already been through 2 different, I don't know, call it semesters or courses of Spanish here. But it's amazing how quick, when you're immersed in it, how quick you can pick it up. And you don't need to know everything. I mean, you kind of, as we call it, Spanglish, Spanish and English, kind of a mixture. And, just knowing that, between that and talking with your hands, we call it charades.
Charades, yeah.
You can get along pretty easily.
But we learned, to get along in a restaurant, we can talk correctly, ordering in a restaurant and in a cab. And those are the big things. And maybe in a store, asking how much something cost, or if we were going to talk to our Ecuadorian friends about what we did last week, that might be difficult.
Yeah. And we all have Google Translate now.
There you go. There you go. And, my point is, though, you don't have to be fluent in a language to go live in another country. There's plenty of people that you can get by.
Yeah.
And you'll just learn. And, like I say, I think that long vacation, trying to live like a local, will really kind of give you an idea of what it's like.
So one last question I have for you is, you guys are obviously in your go-go years.
Mhm.
When you think out to 10, 15, 20 years from now, when things start to slow down for you, is your vision for yourself to remain where you're at? Or do you think you'll pivot to get a closer network of family around you?
Good question.
I don't think we've necessarily thought that far. I mean, we love it here, and we're here as long as we love it, is what we say.
Yeah, and the good thing about renting is we can pick up and go anywhere, anytime. So we're not really making long-term plans. So we just don't know. I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons expats move back to the United States is because of grandchildren. That's kind of what we hear all the time. Is,
definitely, yeah.
Oh, my kids had grandkids now, and I want to be closer to them. We're not there yet, so I can't tell you what that's going to feel like when that happens for us. But right now, no plans, and we could stay here the rest of our lives. There's no reason why we couldn't.
Who knows? Maybe our daughter will move here too.
Never know.
Exactly. So your blog is Retire Early and Travel. I'll have links to it. It's a great blog, and it's a great way to explore this alternate lifestyle of how you can have more of your life today rather than staying on that grind trying to save so much for the future. So it's very impressive. Man, you guys moved in breakneck speed too.
Yeah. I want to add one thing. To do this, you don't actually have to retire. I would encourage people to look at living abroad, especially if they have a job that's internet-based. And because, boy, if you work for a U.S. company, an internet-based job, making U.S. wages, living in a place like here, you could save tons more money than you ever could living in the U.S. It'd be a great way to start that, retiring early.
We've met young families in their 30s, with a couple of kids living here. And in some of the other countries that we've traveled to, we've met them in restaurants. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're saving 50 to 75% of their income to retire early, living in another country.
On a U.S.
salary,
Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful point. Tina, Keith, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on this amazing journey. I love it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to be happy. So we're talking about moving and changing where home is and where our heart is. And I can remember back in my mid-30s when I was starting an independent firm, my wife and I moved from a house that we had designed that we really loved to almost down to a starter home. About the same size home, but in a different city, nowhere near as nice as what we had designed and really had fallen in love with. And the reason we did that is because my wife wasn't working. We had young children. I was leaving an established practice at a huge firm to start an independent firm because I knew that's what needed to be done. And during that period of time, my income went down by probably 70-ish% from peak to trough. So it was financial necessity, a big step back to position ourselves for hopefully a big step forward, which has worked out well. But we had to redefine our lifestyle. And I remember when we did that, my wife was cool with it because we were getting closer to her family. She wasn't attached to things. But at the time, for me, it made me feel like a failure. It made me feel like I'm uprooting my family and we're selling our forever home for that. And I had a lot of struggle with that. And I remember the house that we bought, I hardly paid attention to. I'm like, okay, whatever, it's okay. I had a lot of emotional stuff going on with that, feeling like a failure because of that big step back, even though I had the vision going forward. But here's the deal. When we moved to that house, we were much happier than we ever had been in that forever home that I was so attached to emotionally. So home really is where the heart is. And it's important for us to think creatively, especially when we're going into retirement, how to create the life that we want and to think a little bit outside the box. And it's hard for us to do sometimes, but you might end up being happier if you do.
On your marks, get set.
So in the Smart Sprint segment today, I want to encourage you over the next 7 days to think for yourself or have some open discussions about, well, what if we moved internationally, what might be on the short list? What might be something worth exploring just to start to expand the vision of what retirement could be if you're willing to entertain the idea? Hey, thanks for joining me on today's show. Now, to broaden that view of what retirement might be, one of the first things you need to do is to stop using the old traditional methods of retirement planning that really limit the types of thinking that you can do and drive you down a path that was really meant and worked for your parents, but doesn't really work for you. So you need to find a new way to plan for retirement. And I think I have something that can help you with that. Go to 5-Minute Retirement Makeover and learn how the traditional retirement planning method doesn't work for you, and how if you can think a little bit differently and be a little bit more agile, you can have more power, more clarity, and more confidence about your financial future. So to get that 3-video series, go to 5minuteretirementmakeover.com. Until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.